The Biden administration is taking what it calls aggressive action to protect communities historically and disproportionately impacted by pollution. That's a direct quote. Many of them economically disadvantaged. The Environmental Protection Agency announced initial plans to address complaints of water pollution, chemical plants in proximity to homes and schools, and toxic air quality in several southern communities. It's part of President Biden's pledge to tackle environmental-related racial disparities. It comes after the agency's head personally visited a number of impacted communities. EPA Administrator Michael Regan joins us now to discuss his travels and the administration's plans for those communities. Mr. Administrator, great to see you. Off the top, I love definitions because I think it helps audiences get closer to a topic. Define what environmental racism or environmental justice is, and as a subcategory, what is a fence line community?
Well, great questions. And environmental justice and equity is the fair and equitable treatment of everyone as it relates to our environmental regulations and our environmental laws. So we want equal protection for every single individual in this country. And those who are not equally protected are facing disparities and an overexposure to pollution, and we want to alleviate that. Fence line communities, whether people believe it or not, are communities that are on or close to the fence line of many of these big industrial facilities that we have in our society, whether they be industrial chemical facilities or coal plants or just stationary sources that push pollution out in close proximity to too many communities, especially Black, brown, and tribal communities.
How specifically is the EPA addressing this disparity? And in your travels, your most recent travels, Mr. Administrator, did you encounter folks who said, you know what, we've never seen anyone from the EPA in our communities?
I did. I've heard people say that they've not seen an EPA administrator. A few people had never seen their governor or their mayor. These voices, these people have been ignored for decades. And we really wanted to put faces on these issues that we've heard so much about. But we also wanted to do this tour, starting in Mississippi, going through Louisiana, and in Texas. We wanted to do this tour because many of these people have suffered from for decades, but they have solutions to some of these complex problems that they're facing. And so the president has made environmental justice and equity a centerpiece of this administration. I've made it a centerpiece of EPA's work. EJ will be part of the DNA of everything we do. And so it's best that we went, we saw, we heard, we listened, and more importantly, we responded.
And the documents you released, you talked about a couple of things I want to bring up with you. Unannounced inspections and expanding air monitoring capacity in these communities. What do those mean on the ground?
On the ground, we have too many facilities that anticipate when a state or federal agency will show up, and that's when they're on their best behavior. We are going to end that. We know that many of these communities, especially the fence line communities, potentially are subjected to an overburden when it comes to pollution. And so what we're going to do is we're going to amp up our unannounced inspections so that we can show up and be sure that these industries are being good neighbors. We're also going to intensify our monitoring. These communities deserve to know what's in the air they're breathing and what's in the water that they're drinking, and they deserve to know in real time. In many of these communities, there are not adequate air monitoring systems to detect these emissions, and they definitely are not done in a real-time manner so that the communities are well aware of what they're inhaling.
Mr. Administrator, what is the timeline for some of these changes, and when can residents, you were in Jackson, Mississippi, you were in several parishes in Louisiana, when can they expect to see actual changes that they can experience in their own lives?
They're seeing changes immediately. In Jackson, Mississippi, I was supposed to spend time at an elementary school, and that was canceled because that day school was canceled. The water pressure was too low. We saw that in November, and just last week we saw it again in Jackson, Mississippi. So we issued a notice of violation, which puts the city of Jackson on notice that they have to immediately respond and repair those deficiencies. We've issued notices of violation to industries like Nucor and Sasol in Louisiana because we went in, we did inspections, we pushed out some air monitoring, and we determined that they were in violation of the law. we've had a number of conversations with the mayors of Houston, the mayor of New Orleans, and we've actually started a process to think about how we begin to help these residents that have been ignored for so long in terms of potential relocation, evaluations of pollution that's on the ground, and economically driven projects that will bring clean energy sources into these communities. So we've started our action immediately, and we've heard from the community that they are very appreciative that they didn't have to wait too long to see us put our money where our mouths are.
Mr. Administrator, I want to direct your attention to another topic. According to some pretty aggressive reporting in the Washington Post, in the first year of the Biden administration, permits for drilling on federal lands came at a faster pace, I repeat, faster pace, the Washington Post said, than during the Trump administration. Quite simply, why is that the case?
You know, the Department of Interior, as I understand it, were faced with deadlines that were driven by the courts and legal deadlines. And so, you know, while there may have been inaction on some of these permits during the previous or the prior administration, this administration inherited a lot of decisions. And, you know, I think the president has pledged a commitment to climate, to environmental justice, to clean water and clean air. The president has also pledged to follow the law. And then that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this administration follow the law, follow the science, but also look at every avenue possible to put us on the path to get those emission reductions that the president has pledged, whether that be climate-driven pollution or health-based pollution.
Question on Superfund sites. They are the locations identified by the federal government as having very intense concentration of toxic waste. What role will spending in the recently signed infrastructure law play in Superfund site remediation?
It will play a critical role. This administration received $5 billion to focus on Superfund sites and brownfield sites. And I can tell you, I was outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just a couple of weeks ago, talking about the $5 billion and what we're going to do. In that particular site, we're going to clean up that site more than a year sooner than we would have other than having these resources. And we're going to clean it up at a level that is protective of the community, a level that the community is excited about. We're going to do that all over the country. There were 49 Superfund sites all over the country that were stalled. No action because there were no resources. We have eliminated that backlog. We're going to start expediting cleanup, and we're going to clean up these sites at levels that are much greater than they would have been otherwise. This is an excellent opportunity in terms of a win for the communities, for public health protection, but also a significant victory in some cases where these brownfield sites will move from being a blighted eyesore to an economic development opportunity to increase the tax base, job opportunities, and the overall health of these communities.
Let's talk about lead pipes. President Biden has promised to replace the nation's lead pipes using money from the infrastructure law. How quickly can this be done? It sounds like a massive financial and technical logistical undertaking.
It is a serious logistical undertaking. There's no question about that. But we're already starting and getting to work. I was just in Milwaukee this week with Vice President Harris, talking with, local officials, talking with families and mothers who have been impacted by lead. And the reality is that we are already putting in motion $50 million that will be used for technical assistance so that these communities can competitively apply for the grants that we're giving to the states. The president has pledged a 100% lead pipe eradication process, and we're planning on hitting that target.
Mr. Administrator, you're not a scientist, neither am I, but I'm going to race with you a couple of words that I think are important to those communities you talked about earlier, fence line communities and those you're trying to address, particularly in the South. Chloroprene, I believe is the proper pronunciation, and ethylene oxide. What are they and why are they dangerous?
These are toxic chemicals that are potentially carcinogenic, and especially chloroprene and ethylene oxide have been, issues in these communities that we just visited, especially in Louisiana, for far too long. Listen, one facility, the Dinka facility in Louisiana, is a facility that we have put on the watch list to do more. EPA and the Department of Justice have forced this company to do more. And since my Journey to Justice tour, we've required that facility put on more fence line monitoring that will give not only EPA real-time data, but the community real-time data. So we're ratcheting up the pressure to ensure that these industries that spew chloroprene, ethylene oxide, other toxics, we're making sure that they are going to be good neighbors moving forward.
And is it my understanding that both of these two substances have either been undercounted previously or mismeasured in previous surveys?
Absolutely. There have been questions about whether or not these chemicals have been adequately measured, and there have been questions about whether or not we have accurately, understood the impacts to individuals, the public health impacts. But what we have done over the past year, working with the Office of our Inspector General, is not only have we improved our understanding of what we need to do, but we put those actions in motion. And so we're starting to see some real results here. We're starting to put a lot more of these industries on notice. We're taking enforcement action. Many of these companies are now being required to do fence line monitoring, and we're going to keep pushing forward with these enforcement actions as we tighten some of these regulations that we have in place to ensure that we're adequately protecting these communities, especially those that are disproportionately impacted.
And in general sense, Mr. Administrator, for those in the audience whose ears have perked up, can you describe the health effects that we know from chloroprene or ethylene oxide?
They're scary. Cancer, I believe, is what we all can understand, is one of the direct results from being overly exposed to these carcinogens. And listen, it is our intention to really ratchet down on the exposure of all people in this country. The control technologies exist, the management practices exist. There is no excuse for any American to be overly exposed, especially those who we consider to be our most vulnerable population.
EPA Administrator Michael Regan, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.